Welcome back, ninjas, for another problem in the 8 Caillou category. This one's called Will There Be Enough Space? Remember, 8 Caillou's the most beginner level, so we'll go slow. The story: Bob is working as a bus driver. However, he has become extremely popular amongst the city's residents. With so many passengers wanting to get aboard his bus, he sometimes has to face the problem of not enough space left on the bus. He wants you to write a simple program telling him if he'll be able to fit all the passengers. Here's the overview. You have to write a function that accepts 3 parameters, and they've stubbed this out for us over here in the right in the window. Cap is the amount of people the bus can hold, excluding the driver. On is the number of people on the bus, excluding the driver. These are referring to the method parameters or function parameters. You'll often hear method and function used interchangeably in programming. And wait is the number of people waiting to get on the bus, excluding the driver. So we basically don't have to factor the driver in at all into this. If there is enough space, return 0, and if there isn't, return the number of passengers he can't take. And so I like how they give some examples at the bottom. They really solidify the understanding. Consider, for example, cap is 10, on is 5, and wait is 5. It returns 0 because he can fit all 5 of the waiting passengers, right? 5 plus 5 is 10. That's at capacity, but it counts because, you have to be at capacity or lower. But consider the second example where your capacity is 100. You've already got 60 passengers on board, and 50 more want to get on. Clearly, there's not enough room. 50 plus 60 is 110. That's in excess of 100, and so we're going to return that 10, that leftover amount that won't fit on the bus. They call this method enough. Again, Code Wars made this out for us. They stubbed this out. Returns the number of passengers. They show you the method signature. This is basically just a repeat of what we read. You can look through it again if you'd like. Return value is an integer, and that's set up here. And again, repeat, so we won't go over that again. Let's head over into code, and normally this would be the part where you pause the video and try this out for yourself at first. I say in this very beginner level series, you may have 0 programming experience. If you want to watch me and not pause and just watch solutions, that's fine too. When you start to feel comfortable though, you're definitely going to want to try these on your own. So since this is beginner stuff, let's go over this. Why is this a method? And it follows the signature of a method. First, you start with an access modifier. And this is getting a little ahead of ourselves, but I like to introduce the concepts. If you don't fully understand, don't worry, but you get this stuff through repetition. Public is an access modifier. It says that parts of the code outside of the class kata, right? This is a class. Look at the curly braces, and everything within these curly braces are part of the kata class. And when I mark something as public, it means that code outside of this class can access it. And that's good for some things. Although, people need to be able to use your class. What if everything's private? It's worthless. There's nothing to use. So you do want to keep these interfaces small. You wouldn't want tons of public methods. It makes the class complicated and harder to use, but you definitely need some. The next word is static. This is advanced. I wouldn't worry too much about it right now, but it's basically the really simple way I like to explain static is it's like turning off object-oriented programming. So you don't have to actually create an instance of kata to access this method. Normally you have to instantiate an object of this type, and then that method becomes available to you. But now I can just, if I'm outside the class, I could call it like kata enough, and put my parameters in. Normally you have to say, kata equals new kata, something, however you construct an object, and then from your variable, you could call enough. That's sort of the difference there. Not too important right now. Finally, you get to the return type. It says what the function will return, an integer in our case, that's right. And I don't like the name of the method, but I didn't name it, enough. And finally, our 3 parameters, int, cap, on, and wait, terribly named. Note that you have space. You know, it doesn't kill you to write capacity. And all of a sudden, when you're working with people, that's a lot more clear on what you're talking about. Similarly, I would probably say, instead of on, I would say num on board, something like that, right? And wait, I put num waiting, something like that. Those are a little more expressive to me. I like to be expressive. You know, you don't need to write out a whole story here. There's some point where a variable name becomes too long, but I like to do something like this. It is popular to do extremely short names like they had, so bear with it if you encounter it. So this is just a placeholder. It throws an exception. This is nice. It's like your warning. If imagine you had a big project and you go to run, and then this thing will throw, and it's like, oh yeah, I forgot to implement that method. You know, you'd probably get some warning because this returns an integer. But if it were void, you know, maybe it just doesn't do anything and you're expecting it to do something. So that could be a little confusing. So we'll get into it now. Basically, we have to figure out the number of excessive passengers. And there's one little catch, right? If there's room, we don't need to say how much room there is. You don't need to say we were clear by 20 passengers or only 4. You just return 0, right? 0 sort of represents everything's okay. And then in the event that something's not okay, then we're going to return the number of people waiting. So I could create a little variable here to calculate the number of excess passengers first. I could say int excess passengers. And to get this right, we know from simple math that the excess would be the number above capacity, right? So to get that, you're going to want to take the number of people already on board the bus, add it to the number of people waiting to get on the bus, and you'll subtract the capacity out, right? And that'll give you what's left over. Keep in mind, if we go under, this could be a negative value, right? But we don't want to return that negative value. We want to return 0, so that's where the catch comes in. So I'll say if excess passengers is less than or equal to 0, this means there was room, right? We're good. We went up to capacity, but not over it. We cover all the cases there. We could say return 0 simply. Otherwise, we can say return excess passengers. It's some number above 0, and it's exactly the value that we want. Now, sometimes you'll see people do this. I don't like this. That's not necessary. The only logic here is it's going to exit the function at this point, right? You don't really need the else at that point. If that condition, excess passengers less than or equal to 0, is met, you return and you're out of the function. You never even make it down here. So you can write it out the other way, but I don't care for that personally. And then we can look at another shorthand way using the ternary operator that is very common. You don't need to use it in this level, but most people like it. It's a shorthand, so we can do it that way too. And to do that, it's very much like an if-else statement where there's two conditions. You know, it's if something or something else. If you got a simple if statement like that, if-else, then the ternary operator might be your friend. So we can shorten this from 4 lines down to something like this. What you do is you put a question mark here, and this is sort of setting up your condition. Imagine there was an if around this. That's setting it up. Question mark. Is it true or is it not true? And whatever follows the question mark will apply in the true case, and then I'll put a colon, and then I'll put what should happen for the false case. So we said if it is less than or equal to 0, simply return 0. Otherwise, return the number of excess passengers. And so it looks a little weird when you first start coding, right? And it's like, ugh, that's kind of ugly. But it's really not ugly once you're in code for a while. You'll like it a lot, and you'll see it a lot. So, and then of course, you know, you could, if you wanted to, do this all in one line and not use the little temporary variable I did here, but I won't get that excessive with it. So we should run the test now to make sure I didn't make any terrible mistakes. Let's see how that goes. Compilation. The name numBoard does not exist in the current context. So this is a good opportunity, right? Sometimes the error messages are good, sometimes they're really bad. This would be a good opportunity for you to pause the video and see what I did wrong. Otherwise, I'll go in and fix it. So yeah, that's fair. numBoard, what is that? It's right here. And I never made a variable numBoard, right? I was trying to use the parameter, but it was actually called numOnBoard. So you got to be really specific. You got to match cases. You know, if I did this, this won't work either. It's got to match exactly, and that's fair. You know, how can you expect the compiler to just know you meant to type something the other way? So let's fix that. And there's the green that we like. You can expand this if you want to see. Well, they don't show you much, but test runs this bit here. And then when you hit attempt, it'll run a larger suite of tests that presumably have more edge cases and things to try to break your logic. But we got the green there. Not too surprising, right? This one wasn't bad. Some simple math. And yeah, learning some basics about conditional statements. That's the if-else. It's a fundamental building block you'll use a lot. We learned about method signatures. That's very important too. And the ternary operator, your new friend. So feel free to hit me up in the comments section if you have questions. Otherwise, we'll move on to another video. Thank you for watching.